Hi, my friends. It's Matt Christopher here, and just wanted to say thank you very much to the last video, your support for the last video that I produced. We are sitting at over, I think, about 6,300 views, 6,400 views. Thank you very much. So I'd like you to like and subscribe. So a little challenge for us. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe. I'd really love to get our the support up, so maybe we get 6,000 people that will subscribe. So yeah, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much. And also, we have hit well over 100,000. I think we're 110,000 views, something like that. So that's incredible. So to have over 100,000 people view this very humble little channel, I'm over the moon. So thank you very much, and I hope that these little videos are at least thought-provoking, and I hope that they're helpful, especially when it comes to your dealing with your present dealing with or previous dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses. So today I'm going to jump on to talk about two issues. I won't go into sort of massive detail because the two subjects I'm going to talk about are really huge, and that is the changes that have only literally being announced through the governing body, the slight change to the way in which disfellowshipped people are dealt with, and secondly, the issue of dress and grooming. So just on a point, I'll start off with the dress and grooming part. Now, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and my parents are raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, and my grandparents were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, one of the things you don't realise about being a Jehovah's Witness is that there is so many, in many ways, unwritten laws about the way that you are to present yourself to the group. Now, many of you who were Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance, in the 70s or 80s or so forth, would know that, I can only speak for Australia here, I think the United States was the same way, and maybe the UK and Canada maybe, is that the white shirts they were a thing. It was a thing. So basically, if you were going to give a discourse as an appointed brother, for instance, you're going to get onto the podium there. If you were wearing a blue shirt or any other green shirt or whatever it may be, it might be a pale colour, it didn't matter. That wasn't acceptable. In actual fact, I know one congregation in which they had spare white shirts, believe it or not, if in case someone came along and they were going to give a part and they weren't wearing a white shirt. Okay? Now, I don't believe, I might be wrong on this, but I don't believe that the white shirt policy was actually written down. I'm not sure about that. But certainly it was enforced. Okay, now we look at it now, 20, 30 years on, and most Jehovah's Witnesses today in 2024 would have absolutely no idea that the elders would literally be enforcing a white shirt policy. No, they wouldn't know about that. But at the time, the coercive, and that's what it is, the coercive influence by the organisation, these tests of loyalty were even exacted on idiotic practices such as only wearing a white shirt. Secondly, I know that if you were wearing, for instance, you were wearing a sports jacket or a blazer, I should say, and it wasn't obviously matching to the trousers, that wasn't acceptable for being on the platform. That wasn't even good enough. It had to be the same material basically had to be a suit. Okay, so it couldn't be, whatever complementary sort of colours. That wasn't allowed, and that was enforced. If you didn't have a suit jacket, okay, or a blazer, you weren't able to use the microphones, as in going up and down the aisles and handing people the microphones. Now people say, well, what difference does it mean? So you couldn't use the microphone, so you couldn't close a meeting in prayer. You were giving a part on the service on the school. Big deal. What's the big deal? Now, in an insular community as Jehovah's Witnesses, what happens is there's two things. There is a visible example of your compliance to Jehovah God, and of course / Jehovah's organization. And when you look at the literature, and I won't go through the articles pertaining to that, is there's sort of this trifecta, which is questioning yourself, how would Jehovah feel about it? What's Jehovah's standards? Then usually a complete misappropriation of a scripture to some scripture about holiness, fine, that's moral holiness, and then trying to tie that in to how you dress, as if the colour of your shirt or not having a tie or a suit or so forth, that's about holiness, which is a complete misrepresentation of what the Christian virtues are. And then thirdly is, how would that reflect on the organisation? Okay, so that's sort of ham, cheese and tomato of logical fallacies that are going on. Now, as I said, those things, the white shirts, the whether you're going to wear a blazer or something like, or not allowed to wear a blazer while on the platform or doing these things, mightn't have ever been written down, but it was enforced. Okay. Now, another point, a little bit not funny, but sad. But I remember I was talking to some elderly Jehovah's Witness women, and we're talking about the time they were, the elders were talking about, what kind of suit you're allowed to have, whether it was a single-breasted suit, a double-breasted, all of that craziness. And I remember there was two sisters in my former congregation, two Jehovah's Witness women, in my former congregation in, I think it was Carina Heights, I think. And they were saying, they're great people. They said, oh, mate, what are you complaining about? When we were going to the meetings, these were born-in Jehovah's Witness women, and they were in their 70s at the time, there used to be an elder who would have a ruler, and then he would go and check the length of the skirt. Now, I've seen that on other threads where, that was before my time, where other women will talk about how they'd go to the Kingdom Hall and there'd be some modesty monitor there, and he would have the ruler out and checking whether what length, the skirt was, where it had to be, and so forth. Now, I don't believe that was ever written down. Now, the reason why I say that is because Watchtower are in many ways exceptionally good at having this sort of official policy to say, look, we've always asked people to have to be modestly dressed, clean and tidy, but it's we don't mandate what personal choice is out of that, giving the opinion that as long as something is modest in their view of modesty, then it's up to you, when clearly it's not, never has been. I think for those of you who are watching this could probably give your own examples of that kind of rule that was in place. Now, why does that matter? Why did it matter? As I said, you're in this insular community. The outside's the enemy. They're all marked for death. you're in the ark, the not Jesus Christ, it's the loving organisation is the spiritual ark that's been prepared for you for salvation, and your self-worth is, in a sense, especially for the men folk, of course it can be for women as well, but for the men folk, is that you're viewed, especially being born in, is that over time there's an expectation that as a faithful, loyal Jehovah's Witness man, that you're going to grow spiritually. And how that is expressed in the Jehovah's Witness context is you start gaining these, what they call privileges. They call them privileges. But really what it is it's a stepping stone to indicate where you're at spiritually, in compliance to Watchtower policies and your own willingness to submit to their leading. So what would happen is you might come in, and then you would then be taking on very light duties, like, for instance, the microphones, and then so forth, and then maybe after a few years, then you'd be a ministerial servant or a deacon, but ministerial servant, Jehovah's Witnesses use that word, and then maybe after the next 5-7 years, something like that, you might be in line to becoming an elder, and then so forth, and then even within the elder body, there is, certainly used to be, the presiding overseer and the secretary and service overseer. So the three, I suppose, drivers of the elder body, for instance. And then you could go up further and further and further into the organisational structures. So the fact is if you have a person that has become a Jehovah's Witness, able-bodied, and they're meant to be in good standing, and you realise that 5 years later or 6 years later, John, he's not a ministerial servant. People just ask, oh, what's happened? What's this? What's going on? And it's you get to know, and often it will be issues about attitude. Okay, and so the person sort of, at least there's a bit of a question mark over that person. So in that insular community, having these privileges, as they say, is actually it's a big thing, and something that in the Jehovah's Witness context is actually very important. There'll be questions asked as to why a person, after being a witness for so many years, why aren't they appointed? So that'd be the issue. So there's these underlying sort of issues that are there, that, especially with dress and grooming, first of all, that they've never been written down. So to have a situation now where the governing body and the governing body member, as I said, I won't be mentioning their names, but he was sporting a beard, which I think's always, now it's very funny to me. But he said that the governing body had decided that there was going to be these rule changes. Now, one of the scriptures that they used for the issue of dress and grooming, which is just, I mean, it's if it wasn't so serious, it would be hilarious, is that they quote Paul, and he talks about, deadening the body members and so forth, and abstaining from the former course of life. Now, what Watchtower says, this is on jw.org, that the dress and grooming, right, this is somehow affecting people that might be battling with these sort of moral dilemmas that they're facing. Now, I mean, the whole idea of the faith community, especially for that of Christians, is that when a person comes to Christ, it's not men or women or organizations that facilitate this change, but really it is putting on Christ. And in the Christian context, it is that rebirth of the person, being born again or begotten, that there's a new birth to that person. It's the miracle of Christianity. It's the miracle of faith. Now, if in fact you're going to lapse into your former way of life, whichever way Jehovah's Witnesses wish to put that, because someone wasn't wearing a tie, or they weren't wearing a white shirt, or because some woman was wearing pants, some sister was wearing pants in the Kingdom Hall, in the issue of coming to Christ, doesn't it ring alarm bells that a person's apparent faith is so flimsy, and that they're coming to Jehovah, because Jehovah's Witnesses are mainly focused on their standing before Jehovah. It's not about Jesus Christ. As a rule, they do not put on Christ. They don't believe in being born again. That is not something, even their baptism is, generally speaking, is one of in a sense, an outward display of their willingness to submit to Jehovah's organization. Has absolutely nothing to do with the experience of Christians, for instance, of Pentecost, or what it meant to die to self and live to Christ. So this kind of it really is, it's blaming people that for whatever reason may wear something that was, for instance, more comfortable for them. They may have, whatever it may be, just might like to be more comfortable, and not to dress as if they're going to a corporate function. That somehow that is responsible for fellow witnesses, fellow Jehovah's Witnesses going off the rails. I mean, that's just crazy. But this is sort of the logic that Jehovah's Witnesses had used. So the question really is, if in fact the governing body has decided that, for instance, beards are now okay, the sky's not going to fall in because a person's having a beard. It's not God dishonoring. It's not bringing reproach on Jehovah to have a beard. If it comes to, as they've said, that though men we're talking, they don't have to wear a tie if they don't want to. If they're not on the platform, they don't need to wear a suit if they're not on the platform. And also, heaven forbid, women are allowed to wear pants if they would like. Now, I won't even go into it. It's just too humiliating to women as to why Jehovah's Witnesses had the idea that they weren't allowed to wear pants in the meeting. That's another video, or maybe Elaine from JW Escape she would do a far better job in dealing with the nuances of that subject, or Mike and Kimmy would do that. But it's just now the governing body has decided that it's okay. So we've got this, beards are okay. Don't have to wear a tie anymore. Don't have to wear a suit anymore. And women can wear pants. Okay? So suddenly the people who were in mortal moral danger are going to be stumbled from the faith, because what would happen if you wore a beard? They don't exist anymore? Okay, what about them? Okay, so it's a good question. If they were going to be stumbled because you had a beard, a woman wore pants, or you happen to have a white shirt or so forth, what's happened to them? After 100 years, now they're not going to be stumbled anymore? They're not going to go back to their former way of life? Good question. It's simply just a cynical exercise by Watchtower to try to modernise, because the control that they will use the control they've wielded before isn't working. And as other XJW commentators have said, we very much doubt the rubbery figures of how many Jehovah's Witnesses that there is. We really doubt that, and how they're counting or identifying active Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, is changing by the minute. Now, second point, and this is on the issue of shunning, or on the disfellowshipping process. Now, it's no coincidence that two things: the legal loss in Norway, in which the government, and Jonas did a great video on this some time ago, is that the government in Norway was not banning Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a good thing. I don't believe that's the right way to go about it. I don't believe in persecuting anybody. But one thing is, if you're going to have a shunning policy that damages people emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually, at the very least, you don't deserve millions upon millions of Norwegian, I think it's kroner, I think it is, but millions of dollars. You don't deserve that. The taxpayers should not be subsidising you in your endeavours, which are counterproductive to the whole idea of having in a sense, you're subsidising charities which are meant to be doing a service to the community. Okay? Now, what others have said on the issue of, and I mentioned his name later, Anthony Morris III, is that, yes, there's been some salacious things said about him, but and why he left. But one of the sorry, I didn't write down the XJW's name. Sorry. Was that Anthony Morris III essentially left Watchtower because they knew that they needed to change their policies around disfellowshipping and shunning. And he said privately, and then, of course, publicly, in that very, very well-known video where he says, we'll never change. We will never change. That was about the disfellowship. We're never going to do it. Okay? So, to me, with this change now, with and I'll talk a little bit about that, the softening of the shunning, this is a reaction to Jehovah's Witnesses who know that if they keep this policy up, what's going to happen is, no, they're not going to be banned, not going to be put in prison. That's not what Western democracies do, nor should they. But I'll tell you what, you're not going to get your tax exemption. You're not going to get your tax exemptions. And there's absolutely no way that Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania is going to put up with being taxed the same way as a corporation. No way. So they're going to, which they are, to modify whatever policies they can so that they at least appear like they are mainstream. Now, going back to that, other commentators, ex-Jehovah's Witness commentators, have said for some time that at least the facade of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is before all the beard changes, all of that, is that they were trying to be mainstream as humanly possible, at least on the outside. Okay, and to those astute ex-Jehovah's Witness commentators, everything that they have said, to be honest, to a word, now has come true. Now, what this member of the governing body said on the issue, and there was a video associated with it, he said this was about those who were disfellowshipped, is that now they feel it's a. I'm paraphrasing here. They feel that it's a conscience issue whether or not Jehovah's Witness will speak to a disfellowship person if they're coming to the Kingdom Hall. I'm paraphrasing. Come to the Kingdom Hall, but this wouldn't be like extended conversations. This is me paraphrasing, okay? And they had a video, and from my notes, you had a fine, upstanding, solid Jehovah's Witness couple, and they see this poor, dreaded creature, this woman, and I wrote down, dressed in black, because we all know that those who are disfellowshipped or not Jehovah's Witnesses, we all dress in black because we're just so upset that we're no longer with the loving organisation. So we all dress in black because of that reason. Not because it's slimming, but no, it's we all dress in black and we walk around with our heads down like this, and this poor creature, this poor woman, even that she's acting, that's the way she was, like this. And she comes into the Kingdom Hall, and I wrote the note that the couple, the Jehovah's Witness couple, look at each other and they nod like, do we do it? Do we not? And they go up to her, can't remember what her name was, and they say something to the effect of, welcome, Jenny. It's so good to see you. And she's like, oh, thank you. All dressed in black with a head down like this, as you would, as we do. Probably all that was missing was a little bit of sackcloth, and something like that would have been more appropriate for her. Now, this sort of pantomime is this. The governing body decides or feels now that beards are okay. For instance, I've spoken about my experiences with Jehovah's Witness men that grew them and the way they were treated and just absolutely rubbished and basically persecuted in their own faith. Stay witnesses, cop that sweet, that was the way it was. Or if a woman wished to wear pants, wear business slacks or so forth, the way that she was treated, bad-mouthed and so forth. We've all seen all of that, the white shirt brigade and so forth. Now, this is the point, I think, and I think this is something that stays with me on these subjects, is it's a psychological ploy. Okay, there was a university test. I know many, especially in the United States, will know what I'm talking about. There was a university, I think it was Princeton, may be wrong, but I believe it was Princeton. They did a psychological test in which they got two groups, and one were the prisoners and the others were the jailers. Okay, so I'm no, if it's not Princeton, please forgive me, but I think it was Princeton. And they had to stop the experiment because the jailers started abusing those people that they were looking after. They were students at the university. This experiment got out of control. Now, this is the point. What Watchtower did is faithful, loyal men, ignorant men or willfully blind men were given the tools where they were essentially the jailers. Okay? Those imbeciles, as I mentioned, that had the measuring stick there and going and checking the length of the women's skirts. Those who were running around the kingdom halls, not just checking what colour shirt you had or tie or whether you had growth or a moustache or whatever, and then if you didn't comply to that, my goodness, there was big trouble coming. Okay, you're going to be bad-mouthed you were going to be brought lower than a snake's belly, okay, because you weren't compliant. Now, the thing is, these men didn't come up with this themselves. This came up, the local elders, in a sense, were given this power to go around the place and to essentially abuse people. And that's what they did. There wouldn't be a lifelong Jehovah's Witness that wouldn't remember the comments that were made, or local needs parts, and the horrific explanations as to why you shouldn't have a white shirt, or why you shouldn't have this, or what would happen with this, or catastrophic spiritual consequences because of even the smallest breach of these arbitrary rules. And I think that's a catastrophe, because I know that there is elders, and they've reached out to me, former elders who've reached out to me over the years, and I know it troubles them. It does, because when these changes happen, the spell is broken. Okay, the spell's broken. You're an elder and you're saying how ungodly it is that if someone's got a beard, my goodness me, and you know, behaving like Satan, and you're a this and you're a that, and my goodness me, and all of that. And then they change their mind. Not only you've got victims everywhere, you've got people that have been humiliated and degraded, okay, victims of these arbitrary policies, which is essentially, these are tests of loyalty. That's what it's about, compliance. And then you've got in a sense, the elders who are there to enforce that, and they're expected, their KPI, so to speak, is how they keep the congregation clean. It's not just about the moral issues. It's or sexual offences, I should say. But dress and grooming was such a big thing because of its identification of the watchtower. Okay, so we represented the watchtower, and it says it in the publications. But what's interesting is, on the issue of shunning, this member of the governing body with his newly minted grey beard, which seems to be, I don't know whether he's putting fertiliser on it or what, but it's growing very lush. He spoke about that their understanding of 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 11. Now, I won't read 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and essentially 1 to 11. I won't go through the whole lot, but in, I think it's verse 11 or 12, the Apostle Paul says, do not eat with such a man who's, immoral and this and so forth. Okay, so they, for the last 100 and something years, let's say 100 years, since Rutherford, that was one of the pillars of the disfellowshipping. You wouldn't even eat with such a man. Okay, now this bearded member of the governing body then says, then they realise, this is what he said, now they realise the 1 Corinthians chapter 5 is talking about those who abandon the faith, and talking about apostates. And I'm very, very worried about apostates, because I've met a couple of them, and they are scary people. They're very, very scary. And it's not talking about just the general garden variety sinner, okay, that you're not allowed to talk to. Okay, now, 2 points. And I know that Elaine from JW Escape does a really wonderful job on her summary of Scripture. But essentially, if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 5, it tells you straight away, often in the subheading, is that this was an issue that Paul, the Apostle Paul, was talking specifically to the Corinthian congregation about one particular case, and that was the issue of incest. And the Apostle Paul says, I think in verse 1 or verse 2 of 1 Corinthians chapter 5, he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the conduct was something that you would not even see with the pagans, and they would not put up with this. One example, one person, okay? And that their behavior would not be accepted even by the pagans. Now, what a Jehovah's Witness, I'm not saying that's the only scripture, but it's one of the pillars of their disfellowshipping process. So not to eat with a person is at such an extreme degree of their behavior that the pagans, the non-Christians would not tolerate. Doesn't it tell you how extreme that situation is? And that's why it was recorded in the scriptures. That extreme behavior was like nobody would put up with it. And that was the case of incest. But then what have Jehovah's Witnesses done when it comes to their behavior, when it comes to the issues of incest? How do they behave, or how are they found in terms of the scales of justice when we're talking about issues of child molestation? Well, as a campaigner for well over a decade now, and a very active member of the ex-Jehovah's Witness community who has spent so much, actually decades, because I campaigned for these changes to their policies while I was a Jehovah's Witness. Okay? While I was the Jehovah's Witness. And people that know me, that were in congregations with me in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, they will know how outspoken I was about that. Okay? And it didn't end very well for me. Now, the point of a roundup of this is everything that was apostate propaganda 10, 15 years ago, right, that was meant to be drawing people away from the truth, is now policy. Okay? So I said in some other videos, and we were talking with other ex-JWs, with Daphne and Steve, and we were talking about what changes there was. Well, in that conversation, which I think I mentioned in another video, we were going through all of this, and now it's coming true. So, point is that probably within a few years, they will be completely unrecognizable. Two things. What about the conscience of the people that enforced all these rules? What about them? Okay, what about them? I know it's hard to feel sorry for the elders or the circuit overseers or district overseers, but you know what? They have willfully accepted this hypnotic trance that they've been under. But you know what? As I said, when the rules change and you see the members of the governing body sporting their bushy beards, and nothing wrong with that, there's many men that will realise that all of the things that they said in God's name, all the things they read in the Watchtower articles, all the things they said in the local needs parts, all the times they went out to Jehovah's Witness families and pointed out what was wrong with them, and you know why they should be doing better. And now this is to keep Jehovah's standards, and now they're not. It's like yesterday's news. Okay, it's not even, it's just not even a wrapping paper. It's nothing. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Now, that is something that, I'm not having a go here, but many ex-JWs, we never talk about the effect on the elders. Okay? Because I know that there's many former elders or elders, even at the moment, who are really suffering because their conscience are bothering them. They really are. Okay, I'm not excusing them, but they were duped. Okay, they were lied to. We're all lied to. And the changes now, while in themselves, there's nothing wrong with that, probably heading in the right direction. But the reason why they changed all of that is because their operating model changed. Okay, they're no longer a door-to-door printing corporation in which needed salespeople to be going there, pounding the pavements and distributing their wares. Advertise the king and the kingdom, which is nothing more than just a sales slogan wrapped up in religious fervor. And now it's a multimedia corporation. Well, you don't need people going door to door if you own a multimedia corporation. You just don't do that. People access your product online. So why do you don't need compliance in that way? And so of course you can let the you can let the standards go, because you're going to need Jehovah's Witnesses to do other things, primarily to give money. Okay, and that's for another video. I think there's been some astonishing discoveries out of Norway, and what ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have been able to find where the money has gone. But anyway, thank you very much. As I said, please like and subscribe. And that was on the top of my head today. So 2 issues: the softening of the shunning policy, and secondly, the changes to dress and grooming. I'm Matt Christopher, and thank you for spending the time with me. I hope that this has been thought-provoking and encouraging, and I will speak to you soon. Cheers, guys.